8 months after my wife Marion died, I was still closing her accounts. That is what you do when somebody leaves. You do not sit around thinking about it all day. You make calls. You cancel things. You write letters to companies that do not care. You try to get the table clean. My name is Frank Hollis. I am 67 years old. I live alone in a 3-bedroom house in eastern Pennsylvania that has been paid off since 2014. Marion and I raised 2 kids in this house. Now it is just me and a coffee maker and a lot of rooms I do not go into anymore. I was sitting at the kitchen table on a Tuesday morning going through Marion's last bank statements when I saw it. $47. Auto debit. Every month. The company name was something like Keystone Storage Solutions. I had never heard of it. I turned the page back. Same charge the month before. And the month before that. I pulled out the older statements Marion kept in a manila folder in the desk drawer. Same charge. Every single month. Going back years. I want to be clear about something. Marion and I were married for 41 years. I knew where our money went. I paid the mortgage. She handled the groceries and the utilities and the church donations. We were not rich, but we were not careless. We had a system. And in that system, there was no line item for $47 a month going to a storage company I had never heard of. I picked up the phone and called the number on the statement. A young woman answered. I told her my name and said I was calling about an account under Marion Hollis. She asked me to hold. When she came back she said yes, there was an active unit under that name. Unit number 317. It had been on autopay for over 7 years. Never missed a payment. Never late. 7 years. I told her Marion had passed away 8 months ago. I told her I was her husband and I wanted to close the account. She said I could do that, but I would need to come in person with a copy of the death certificate and clear out whatever was inside the unit. I said fine. I asked her how big the unit was. She said it was a 5 by 10. Not big, about the size of a walk-in closet. I thanked her and hung up. Then I just sat there. $47 a month for 7 years. That is almost $4,000. Marion spent almost $4,000 keeping something in a storage unit I did not know existed. While we were eating dinner together. While we were watching television. While she was lying in a hospital bed telling me where to find the insurance papers. She never said a word about it. Let me tell you a little about how things have been since Marion died. I wake up at 5:30 every morning because that is when I have always woken up. 20 years in the Navy will do that to you. I make coffee. I sit at the kitchen table and look out at the backyard. Then I start working through whatever is on the list. The list is always the same kind of thing. Cancel the magazine subscriptions. Return the cable box. Call the supplemental insurance company and tell them the policyholder is deceased. Close the joint credit card. Forward the mail. Shred what needs shredding. I spent 18 years after the Navy working as a floor supervisor at a steel parts plant outside of Bethlehem. I know how to run through a checklist. That is what this has been. A checklist. I am trying to get everything squared away so that when I go, whoever has to deal with me does not have a mess on their hands. My son Greg calls once a week, always on Sunday evenings. He lives about an hour away in Allentown, works in insurance. He has a wife and 2 kids and a way of talking to me like I'm one of his clients. Calm, steady, a little too smooth. After Marion died he told me he would handle all of her paperwork. Dad, do not worry about it. I will take care of it. He said that a lot. I let him for a while. Then I started doing it myself because I needed something to do with my hands. My daughter Meg is down in Charlotte. She works at a hospital doing administrative things. She does not call as often as Greg, but when she does she talks to me like a person. She does not manage me. Last week she called and asked me if I had been eating real food or just toast. I told her mostly toast. She said, Dad, come on. I said, I know. My buddy Ray Campas came by last Thursday and helped me haul a bunch of old tools out of the garage. Ray and I go back to the Navy. He is 69 now. Retired electrician. Drives a beat-up Silverado and drinks his coffee black and does not talk unless he has something worth saying. After Marion's funeral he called me and said if you need to move anything heavy just call me. That is Ray. So that is my life right now. Quiet. Getting smaller on purpose. I have been pulling things away one by one, trying to get down to just what I need. Like cleaning off a table. You wipe it down, you put things back where they belong. You throw out what does not matter anymore. But that $47 a month would not leave my head. That evening I called Greg. I asked him a simple question. I said, did you know your mother had a storage unit? There was a pause. Maybe a second, maybe a little longer. Then he said, oh, that is probably just some old furniture or seasonal stuff, Dad. I can call them and cancel it for you. And here is the thing. I have known Greg for 42 years. I was in the delivery room when he came out. I know what he sounds like when he is thinking, and I know what he sounds like when he is buying time. That pause was not him trying to remember. That was him deciding what to say. I told him no. I said I would go myself. He said, "Dad, you do not need to drive all the way out there for a bunch of old junk." I said, "It is fine. I will take care of it." He got quiet again. Then he said, "Okay. Let me know if you need help." After I hung up, I sat at the kitchen table for a long time. The coffee was cold. The bank statement was still open in front of me. $47 a month, 7 years. A 5x10 unit I had never seen. And my son, who had been so eager to handle everything his mother left behind, had just tried to talk me out of going. I did not know what was in that storage unit. But I knew one thing. I was going to find out for myself. I called Ray the next morning. I told him Marion had a storage unit I never knew about and I needed to go close it out. He did not ask me why she had it. He did not ask me what I thought was inside. He just said, "I will drive. You bring the paperwork." That is how Ray has always been. We met on a supply ship in 1981. He was 26 and I was 23, and neither of us had any business being in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. But there we were. You spend enough time working next to someone in a place like that, and you stop needing to explain things. You just say what you need, and the other person either shows up or they do not. Ray always showed up. He pulled into my driveway around 9 in his old Silverado. The truck is a 2008, silver with rust spots along the wheel wells. He keeps saying he is going to replace it, but he never does. I came out with a folder that had Marion's death certificate, my ID, and the bank statement with the $47 charge circled in pen. Ray had 2 coffees in the cup holders, black, no sugar. He handed me one and backed out of the driveway without saying much. I told him the story on the way there. How I had been going through Marion's accounts. How I found this monthly charge I had never seen before. How I called the company and they told me the unit had been active for over 7 years. Ray listened. When I was done, he was quiet for a few seconds. Then he said, "Marion was not the type to waste money. $47 a month for 7 years. Whatever she kept in there, she thought it was worth it." I had been thinking the same thing. Marion managed money the way some people manage a garden. Nothing got wasted. Nothing got forgotten. Every dollar had a place. If she was paying $47 a month to store something, she had a reason. The storage place was about 35 minutes from my house, out past the old lumberyard on Route 9. It was one of those single-story concrete buildings with orange rolling doors and a chain-link fence around the lot. The sign out front said Keystone Storage Solutions. The parking lot had about 4 cars in it. I went inside and talked to the woman at the front desk, young, maybe 30. I gave her my name and told her I was there about Unit 317 under Marion Hollis. She typed it into her computer and confirmed what the woman on the phone had told me. Account opened 7.5 years ago. Autopay on a Visa card. Never missed. Never late. I asked her whose name was on the Visa. She said Marion Hollis. I asked if anyone else was listed on the account. She said no, just the one name, no secondary contact, no emergency access, just Marion. I showed her the death certificate and my driver's license. She made copies of both and had me sign an account transfer form. Then she handed me a key and a small map of the building with Unit 317 circled in highlighter. Ray was leaning against the truck outside when I came out. I held up the key and he nodded and we walked around the side of the building together. The hallways inside smelled like dust and old cardboard. The floors were concrete. The lights were fluorescent and some of them buzzed. We passed rows of orange doors, most of them with padlocks on the outside. 301, 305, 311. The numbers climbed as we went deeper into the building. 317 was near the end of the hall on the left side. I stood in front of it and looked at the lock. It was not the kind the facility provides. It was a master lock, the black and silver kind you buy at a hardware store. Marion had brought her own lock. I do not know why that detail got to me, but it did. I put the key in and turned it. It opened clean. I pulled the lock off and grabbed the handle at the bottom of the rolling door and pulled it up. The first thing I noticed was how neat it was. I had been expecting the kind of mess you usually find in a storage unit. Boxes piled sideways. Trash bags full of old clothes. Broken furniture pieces leaning against the wall. I have helped people clean out units before. That is what they look like. This one looked like someone had set it up on purpose. Like it was a workspace. Like it was meant to be used, not just filled up and forgotten. There were plastic storage bins. The kind with the snap-on lids that you buy at the hardware store. Maybe 15, maybe closer to 20. They were stacked neatly along the back wall on the right side, 2 or 3 high. Each one had a white adhesive label on the front. And on each label, in Marion's handwriting, was a year. 2001, 2002, 3. all the way up to 2022, each year its own box. In the middle of the floor there was a small folding table, the kind you use for card games, and on the table there was a single notebook. The cover was one of those black and white composition books, the kind kids use in school. Written on the front in black marker, in Marion's handwriting, were 2 words. For Frank. Ray and I stood there in that doorway for a while. Neither of us moved. I want you to understand something about Marion. She was not a dramatic person. She did not leave notes on the kitchen counter or write long letters or keep a diary. She was practical. She was organized. She got things done and she did not make a fuss about it. In 41 years of marriage, I do not think I ever saw her do a single thing for show. Everything she did because it needed doing. So when I saw that notebook sitting on that table, with my name written on the front in her handwriting, I knew this was not a scrapbook. This was not old recipes or photo albums or love letters. Marion did not do things like that. This was something else. Ray was the first one to say anything. He took a step inside and looked at the bins, read a few of the labels, and then turned to me and said, "This is not storage, Frank. This is a filing system." He was right. That is exactly what it was. My wife had built a filing system in a storage unit I did not know existed, organized it by year, maintained it for over 7 years, and never told me about it. I walked over to the table and picked up the notebook. I opened it to the first page, Marion's handwriting. Neat, a little slanted to the right, the way it always was. She wrote with a blue pen. She always used blue. The first page said this: "If you are reading this, it means I did not get the chance to tell you in person. I am sorry for that. But you need to know what is in these boxes. Please start with the one marked 2001. I read it twice. Then I closed the notebook and held it against my chest for a second. Not because I was emotional. Because I was trying to figure out what my wife of 41 years had been doing in a concrete room on Route 9 for 7 years without telling me. I set the notebook back on the table and looked at the bins again. 2001 was near the bottom of the first stack. It was one of the older bins. The plastic had yellowed a little. The label was starting to peel at the corners. But the handwriting was clear. Then I noticed one more thing. At the top of the last stack, against the right wall, there was a bin that looked different from the others. Newer plastic, cleaner lid. The label on the front said 2023. 2023. That was the year Marion died. She was diagnosed in February. She passed in late October. That bin was put there sometime during her last year alive. Maybe while she was still going to treatments. Maybe after she stopped. I stared at that bin for a long time. Ray came up beside me. He did not look at the bin. Then he said, "You want to load them up?" I said yes. It took us about 40 minutes to move everything into the truck bed. The bins were not heavy. Most of them felt like they were full of paper. A few had something heavier at the bottom, maybe books, maybe binders. One of them made a faint rattling sound when I tilted it, like there was a small hard object sliding around inside. A cassette tape maybe, or a set of keys. I did not open any of them. Ray backed the truck up to the unit door and we carried them out 2 at a time. I did not talk much. I was counting the bins. 18 total. 18 bins, each one labeled with a year. Plus the notebook. My wife had spent 7 years filling up a storage unit 1 box at a time, and every time she came here, she came alone. She drove here. She unlocked the door. She put something inside. She locked it back up. She drove home, and she sat across from me at the kitchen table and did not say a word. I do not know what to do with that yet. I am just telling you what happened. When we finished loading, I went back inside one more time to make sure we had not missed anything. The unit was empty. Just the folding table and a power strip plugged into the outlet on the back wall. A power strip. What did she need power for in here? I unplugged it and folded the table and took both of them with me. I signed the paperwork at the front desk to close the account. The young woman asked if I wanted a receipt. I said yes. She printed it and handed it to me and said, "I am sorry for your loss." I nodded and walked out. The drive home was quiet. Ray did not turn on the radio. I did not either. I sat in the passenger seat and held the notebook in my lap and looked out the window at the same roads I have driven my whole adult life. Route 9 past the lumberyard. Left on Chestnut. Down through the underpass. Up the hill past the church where Marion and I got married in 1983. When we were about 5 minutes from my house, Ray said, "You want to start on these today or give it a night?" I said today. He nodded. That was it. We carried the bins into my garage and lined them up along the wall in order. 2001 on the left. 2023 on the right. 18 boxes. 18 years of something my wife collected without telling me. Ray pulled over 2 folding chairs and set them facing the bins. He went inside and poured 2 cups of coffee. He came back and handed me one and sat down next to me. I looked at that row of boxes. I thought about Marion sitting in that storage unit by herself, organizing these things, writing the labels, keeping it all straight. She did this the same way she did everything. Carefully. Without asking for help. I reached for the bin marked 2001. I unclipped the lid on both sides and lifted it off. And that is when everything I thought I knew about my life started to come apart. The first thing I pulled out of the 2001 box was a piece of paper I had not seen in over 20 years but recognized right away. It was a copy of my workplace injury report. The original. Dated April 14, 2001. Lehigh Valley Precision Steel, Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. Employee Frank D. Hollis, floor supervisor. Description of incident: structural failure of an overhead crane rail bracket resulting in collapse of load onto employee's right shoulder, upper back, and neck area. Transported by ambulance to St. Luke's. Admitted overnight. I remember that day like it was last week. I was walking the floor doing a safety check before second shift came on. I heard the sound before I felt anything. A crack, then a groan, then something very heavy coming down very fast. I got most of my body out of the way but my right shoulder and back took the worst of it. 2 fractured vertebrae. Torn rotator cuff. 3 months out of work. 8 months of physical therapy after that. My right shoulder still clicks when I reach for anything above my head. 23 years later, and I still cannot sleep on that side. I put the injury report down on the workbench and kept going. The next document was a copy of the settlement agreement. I recognized this one too. I had signed it in Dale's kitchen. My brother Dale. 5 years older than me. He had set the whole thing up. When I got hurt, I did not know anything about workers' comp claims or personal injury lawsuits or how any of that worked. I was a factory floor guy. I knew how to run a shift and maintain equipment and keep people from getting killed. I did not know lawyers. Dale said he knew a guy. He said he had a lawyer friend from his contracting days who handled exactly this kind of case. He said, "Let me take care of this. Frankie, you just focus on getting better." So I did. I let Dale handle her. He talked to the lawyer. He talked to the insurance company. He came back to me a few months later and said they had reached a settlement. $38,000. He said that was the best they could do. He said these companies fight you tooth and nail, and the fact that we got 38 was a win. I remember sitting at his kitchen table and signing the papers. My shoulder was still in a brace. Miriam was at home with the kids. Greg was 17. Meg was 12. I signed where Dale pointed. The check came about 3 weeks later. $38,000. We used most of it to catch up on bills from my time off work and put the rest toward the mortgage. I never questioned it. Why would I? Dale was my brother. He was looking out for me. That is what I believed for 23 years. Now I was sitting in my garage looking at a document I had never seen before. It was an internal claims evaluation report from the insurance company that covered the steel plant. Not the settlement agreement. Not the paperwork Dale showed me. This was the insurance company's own assessment, the one they did before any negotiation happened. It was addressed to the plant's legal department. And at the bottom of the second page, in a boxed section labeled Recommended Settlement Range, there was a number. $142,000. I read it 3 times. I put the paper down. I picked it up and read it again. The insurance company's own evaluation said my injury was worth $142,000, and I got 38. Ray was sitting next to me. He had been reading along, leaning over a little to see the pages as I laid them out on the workbench. He did not say anything for a while. Then he said, "That number. Have you ever seen that before?" I said, "No. I have never seen this document." I did not know it existed. I kept pulling things out of the box. The next set of papers were letters, photocopies, not originals. They were between a lawyer named Peter Kessler and my brother Dale. Not between Kessler and me, between Kessler and Dale. I had never heard the name Peter Kessler. The lawyer Dale told me he had hired was a man named Tom Brannigan. I remembered the name because Dale talked about him like they were old buddies. Good old Tom, he will get us a fair deal. But these letters were between Dale and a different lawyer entirely. And they were not about getting me a fair deal. The first letter was dated June of 2001. It was from Kessler to Dale. The subject line said settlement structure and disbursement. The letter discussed what it called the differential between the initial offer and the claimant's accepted amount. It laid out a fee schedule for what it called consulting and case management services provided by Dale Hollis. The fee was listed as 40% of the differential. I am not a lawyer, but I can do math. The insurance company offered $142,000. I accepted $38,000. The difference is $104,000. 40% of that is about $41,600. That is what Dale charged, not the insurance company. not the plant. Dale charged a fee on the money that should have come to me. There was a second letter, dated August of 2001. This one referenced a bank transfer. It included a routing number and an account number. The account was not mine. I have had the same bank account since 1989. I know my own numbers. These were not my numbers. The third letter was a receipt of payment confirmation from Kessler to Dale. It confirmed that consulting fees in the amount of $41,600 had been deposited into the designated account. It thanked Dale for his assistance in resolving the matter efficiently. Efficiently. That is the word they used. My brother helped them take $104,000 from me and they called it efficient. I put the letters down and sat there. Ray was quiet. The garage was quiet. I could hear a bird outside and the hum of the old refrigerator I keep out here for beer and sodas. Normal sounds. The kind of sounds that are supposed to go with a normal life in a house you own in a town where you have lived for 30 years. Except nothing about this felt normal anymore. At the bottom of the 2001 box, underneath all the legal papers, there was a small piece of notepaper, lined, torn from a spiral notebook, Marion's handwriting. Blue pen. It said, "I found this in the old filing cabinet in the basement when I was looking for the deed. The numbers do not match what Frank told me he received. I do not know what this means yet. But I am keeping it." There was no date on the note, but it was clipped to a photocopy of the insurance evaluation report, and someone, Marion I assume, had written in the margin of the photocopy, found October 2014. 2014. That was 10 years ago. That was 3 years before Marion got sick. That means she sat on this for years. She found it, she saw the numbers did not match, and she did not come to me. She started collecting. I looked at the row of boxes lined up along the wall. 18 of them. 2001 through 2023. She had been at this for a long time. I opened the box marked 2002. More letters. More photocopies. Some of these were between the plant's HR department and their insurance carrier. Internal memos about my case that I was never copied on. One of them mentioned that the claimant's representative Dale Hollis had negotiated a reduced settlement on behalf of the claimant. Another memo noted that the claimant, that is me, had signed a full release and waiver. I do not remember signing a full release. I remember signing what Dale put in front of me. I did not read every page. My shoulder was in a brace and my brother told me it was all standard. At the bottom of the 2002 box there was an envelope with a sticky note on the front. Marion's writing again. It said, "I called the plant's HR office and asked if they could send me a copy of Frank's injury file. They said they could only release it to Frank or his designated representative. His designated representative on file is Dale Hollis." I did not ask any more questions. She tried to get my file and hit a wall. Because Dale had put himself down as my representative. She could not get the records without going through Dale, and she did not want Dale to know she was looking. I opened the 2003 box. This one had fewer legal documents and more financial records. The top item was a printout from an online property records search. It showed a real estate transaction in Burlington County, New Jersey. A residential property purchased in March of 2003. Buyer, Dale R. Hollis. Purchase price, $215,000. Down payment, $95,000. $95,000. My brother Dale, who at that time was running a small contracting business out of a rented office in Trenton, put down $95,000 on an investment property less than 2 years after my settlement. When I heard about that house back then, I asked him how he swung it. He said business had been good. He said he had a couple of big jobs that paid well. He said he had been saving. I said, "Good for you." I meant it. I was proud of him. Ray reached over and took the property record out of my hands. He put it on the workbench next to the insurance evaluation report. He did not line them up exactly. He just put them next to each other, close enough to see both at the same time. Then he picked up his coffee and took a sip and set it back down. He said, "Your brother bought that place in 03. Down payment $95,000. And in 01, there is about $104,000 missing from your settlement." He did not say anything else. He did not have to. I sat in that folding chair in my garage, and I looked at those two pieces of paper side by side. The evaluation report that said my injury was worth $142,000. The property record that showed my brother putting down $95,000 on a house less than 2 years later. And in between those two pieces of paper, a stack of letters between my brother and a lawyer I had never met, arranging how to split up the money they took from me. I thought about the day I signed those settlement papers. I thought about Dale standing behind me in his kitchen, his hand on my good shoulder, saying, "You did the right thing, Frankie." I thought about driving home that night and telling Marion we got 38,000 and her nodding and saying, okay, let us figure out what to do with it. I thought about the next 23 years of believing that was all there was. $104,000. That is a lot of money for a family like mine. That is a new roof and a college fund and maybe not having to work until I was 62. That is Marion not having to clip coupons for 10 years. That is a different life. Not a fancy one, just a little wider, a little less tight. And my brother took it. My own brother. While I was sitting in his kitchen with my arm in a sling, trusting him to do right by me, he was working with a lawyer I had never heard of to skim the difference and put it in his own pocket. He took my money and bought a house with it. I said it out loud. I did not mean to. It just came out. He took my money. Ray did not look at me. He looked at the workbench. He was quiet for about 10 seconds. Then he said, yeah, it looks like he did. I do not know how long we sat there after that. It might have been 5 minutes. It might have been 20. I was not thinking clearly. I was not thinking at all, really. I was just sitting with this thing in my chest that felt like a cinder block. Not anger. Not yet. Something heavier than anger. Something that sits lower. It was the feeling of finding out that someone you trusted completely, someone you would have done anything for, someone you never once doubted, had looked at you when you were hurt and seen an opportunity. That is what Dale did. He saw his little brother on a hospital bed with a broken back and he saw a way to make money. I looked at the rest of the boxes. 2004, 2005, 6, 7, 8, all the way up to 23. 15 more boxes I had not opened yet. Marion had been collecting this stuff for years. She found the first thread in 2014 and she kept pulling. She kept going to that storage unit, kept making copies, kept adding to the file. She did all of this without saying a word to me. I did not understand that part yet. I understood what Dale did. That part was clear now. But I did not understand Marion. Why she did not just come to me and say, Frank, your brother cheated you. Why she did not just put these papers on the kitchen table and let me deal with it. She knew I could handle it. She knew who I was. So why did she keep it in a box in a concrete room on Route 9? There was more in those boxes. I could feel it. This was not just about the settlement. Marion did not spend 7 years collecting evidence just to prove one thing she already had proof of. There was more. And the only way to find out what it was to keep opening boxes. But not right now. Not tonight. My hands were shaking and I did not want to touch anything else with shaking hands. Ray stood up and stretched his back. He said, you want me to come back tomorrow? I said, yeah. He said, do not call Greg tonight. Do not call Dale. Do not call anybody. Just sit with this. Look at it again in the morning when your head is clear. I nodded. Ray walked to his truck and then turned around and came back. He stood in the garage doorway and looked at me and said, your wife kept all of this for a reason. We do not know what that reason is yet. So do not skip ahead. Then he left. I sat in that garage until it got dark. I did not turn the light on. I just sat there with those boxes in front of me. And I thought about my brother Dale. And I thought about my wife Marion. And I tried to figure out which one of them I understood less. Dale stole from me. That part I could hold in my hands. It was ugly, but it was solid. I could see it. Marion knew. And she did not tell me. That part I could not hold yet. It kept slipping. I went inside, locked the garage door, and sat at the kitchen table. The same table where I had found the $47 charge 2 days ago. The table was clean. I had wiped it down that morning. I always wipe it down. But the table did not feel clean anymore. The next morning I woke up earlier than usual. 4:45. I had not slept well. My mind kept turning over the same question all night, and it was still turning when I opened my eyes. Marion did not do this alone. I lay in bed thinking about it. The documents in those boxes were not the kind of thing you just stumble across in photocopy at home. Legal correspondence between a lawyer and a client. Internal insurance evaluations. Bank transfer records. Property filings from another state. Some of those papers had notations in the margins in Marion's handwriting, cross-references to other documents, dates circled, names underlined. She had done research. She had tracked things down. She had built a case the way someone builds a case when they know they might need it someday. But she was a homemaker who did part-time bookkeeping for the church. She was smart, God knows she was smart, but she was not a private investigator. Somebody helped her. Somebody knew. I got out of bed and made coffee and sat at the kitchen table. I thought about who Marion talked to, who she trusted, and the answer came to me before the coffee was ready. Donna Welch. Donna and Marion had been close for over 30 years. They met at a church volunteer event back when both of them were in their mid-30s. Marion was organizing a clothing drive and Donna was the one who showed up early to help fold. That was how they started. After that they talked on the phone almost every day. They drove to the grocery store together. They sat next to each other at every church function for 3 decades. When Marion got sick, Donna was at the hospital almost as much as I was. At the funeral, Donna had come up to me in the church basement and squeezed my hand and said something. I almost forgot about it until now. She said, "Marion always said you deserved to know everything." At the time I thought she was talking about the afterlife or something spiritual. Donna and Marion were both church women. I figured it was that kind of talk. Now I was not so sure. I finished my coffee, put on a clean shirt, and drove over to Donna's house. She lives about 10 minutes from me, on a quiet street near the old elementary school. Small Cape Cod white siding, flower boxes in the windows that she keeps up even in winter. Her husband Bill passed away about 4 years ago. She lives alone now, same as me. I rang the doorbell. It took her a minute to answer. When she opened the door and saw me standing there, her face did something I did not expect. She did not look surprised. She looked relieved, like she had been holding her breath for months and could finally let it out. She said, "I was wondering when you would come. I have been waiting." She brought me inside and sat me down in the living room. She made tea, which I do not normally drink, but I took the cup because she needed something to do with her hands, and so did I. We sat across from each other. The house was very quiet. There was a framed photo of Marion and Donna on the mantel, taken at some church picnic years ago, both of them smiling. Marion in a blue blouse I recognized. I told Donna I had found the storage unit. I told her I had been going through the boxes. I told her what I had found so far: the settlement papers, the insurance evaluation, the letters between Dale and that lawyer Kessler, the gap of over $100,000. Donna listened to all of it without interrupting. When I finished, she set her teacup down and folded her hands in her lap and said, "Marion started talking to me about this maybe 7 or 8 years ago. She said it started small. Marion would call her and ask if she could come by the school and use the copier." Donna was still working as the administrative secretary at the elementary school at that time. She had access to a copier and a fax machine after hours. Marion would show up with a folder, make her copies, and leave. She never explained what she was copying. Donna did not push. Then one night Marion called Donna at home. It was late, maybe 9:30, which was late for Marion. She said, "Donna, I found something about Frank. Something about money. I think someone took money from him a long time ago and I do not think he knows." Donna asked who. Marion said Dale. That was the first time she said his name out loud. Donna told me she remembered it clearly because Marion almost never talked about Dale. He was Frank's brother and that was about it. Marion did not dislike him exactly, but she did not go out of her way to be around him either. Donna said there had always been a coolness there, the kind you notice but do not ask about. After that night, Marion started telling Donna more. Not everything, not details, but enough for Donna to understand that Marion believed Dale had cheated me out of a significant amount of money from my workplace injury settlement back in 2001, and that she was trying to prove it. Donna said Marion was careful. She did not rush. She would go weeks without mentioning it, then call out of the blue and say she had found another piece. Donna said it was like watching someone do a jigsaw puzzle on a card table in a room no one else was allowed into. Then Marion asked Donna to do something specific. She asked her to make a phone call. There was a person, a woman, who had worked as a paralegal or legal assistant at the law firm that handled my settlement. Not Kessler's firm. The original firm, the one where Dale's friend Tom Brannigan worked. This woman had left the firm years ago. Marion had somehow tracked her down, but was afraid to call her directly. She thought if Dale ever found out she was asking questions, he would know something was up. So she asked Donna to make the call instead. Donna called the woman. She told her she was calling on behalf of a family that had a question about an old workers' compensation case. The woman was cautious at first. Then Donna mentioned Frank's name in the year 2001, and the woman got quiet. She said she remembered the case. She said she could not say much on the phone, but she would be willing to talk to the wife if the wife wanted to call her. Marion called her. Donna does not know exactly what was said in that conversation, but she knows Marion recorded it. Marion told her afterward, "I got what I needed," and she never brought up that phone call again. I sat in Donna's living room and listened to all of this, and I felt two things at the same time. The first thing was something close to admiration. My wife had done all of this. Quietly, patiently, without making a single mistake. She had built a case against my own brother, and she had done it so carefully that Dale never suspected a thing. The second thing was harder. It was the realization that Marion had spent years living inside a secret she kept from me. She sat across from me at dinner. She lay next to me in bed. She drove to that storage unit and added to those boxes and drove home and said nothing. For years. She carried this, and she carried it alone, except for Donna. And she never gave me the chance to carry it with her. I must have been quiet for a long time because Donna leaned forward and said, "Frank, she was not hiding this from you to hurt you." I said, "I know." Donna said, "She was afraid that if she told you too early, before she had everything together, you would go straight to Dale, and Dale would deny it. And it would turn into your word against his, and you would lose. She did not want you to lose." I said, "She could have trusted me to wait." Donna looked at me for a long time. Then she said, "She knew you, Frank. She knew you better than anyone. And she knew that if someone told you your brother stole from you, you would not wait. You would go to his house that same night. She wanted you to have the proof first. She wanted to hand you something Dale could not talk his way out of." I thought about that. And I thought about how well Marion knew me. And I realized Donna was probably right. If Marion had come to me 3 years ago, said, "I think Dale took your money," I would have been on the turnpike to New Jersey before midnight. And I would have walked into Dale's living room with nothing but anger, and he would have looked me in the eye and said, "Frankie, what are you talking about?" And maybe I would have believed him. Because I had always believed him. Marion knew that. So she did it her way. Donna told me one more thing before I left. She said that about 2 months before Marion died, when she was already very sick, barely leaving the house, Marion called her one evening. Her voice was thin, she was tired. She said, "Donna, I am not going to finish this. I am not going to get to tell Frank myself. If he finds that storage unit, he is going to need someone to explain why I did it this way. I want that person to be you." Donna said she promised Marion she would. I asked Donna why she did not come to me sooner, why she waited. She said, "You never asked. And I did not know if you had found the unit yet. I thought about calling you a dozen times. But Marion told me to wait until you came to me. She said you would come when you were ready." She was right about that too. I drove home from Donna's house feeling like I was two people at the same time. One of me was grateful to Marion. What she did took years of work and patience and more courage than I have ever shown in my life. The other one of me was sitting in the passenger seat thinking about all those evenings we spent together in the kitchen. The two of us eating dinner, talking about nothing, and the whole time she was carrying this weight, and she never put any of it on the table between us. I do not know if that was love or if it was something else. I think maybe it was both. When I got home, I went straight to the garage. The boxes were where we had left them, lined up along the wall. I had made it through 2001, 2, and 3 the day before. Today I started pulling from the other end. I opened the box marked 2022. This box was different from the earlier ones. The papers in it were more recent, printed on wetter paper, organized more carefully. There were manila folders inside, each one tabbed with a label. One said bank records, one said property, one said Greg. I stopped. Greg. I pulled out that folder and opened it. Inside there was a single envelope, white, letter-sized, unsealed. On the front, in Marion's handwriting, was one word, Greg. I took out the letter and read it. It was handwritten, 2 pages, blue pen. Marion's slanted script, a little shakier than the older notes, but still clear. It was dated March of 2022. That was about 7 months before she was diagnosed. The letter said this, "Greg, this letter is about your Uncle Dale. If you are reading this, it means I am gone, or it means you opened the storage unit I told you not to open. Either way, you need to know what is in here. 23 years ago, your father was hurt at work. He was owed a settlement of over $140,000. Your Uncle Dale handled the case. Your father received $38,000. The rest went to Dale through a lawyer named Peter Kessler. I have the proof. All of it is in this storage unit, organized by year. You can verify everything yourself. I know that Dale has helped you over the years. I know about the tuition for Lily. I know about the down payment on the house in Whitehall. I have never said anything about those things because they were between you and your uncle and it was not my place. But now it is. What Dale gave you came from what he took from your father. I cannot prove that directly, but the timeline is clear and the amounts are close enough to see it. You need to understand what that means. If I did not get the chance to tell your father before I died, then you have to tell him. This is not optional, Greg. This is not something you can decide to keep to yourself because it is easier. Your father has a right to know what was done to him. He has a right to see these documents. He has a right to decide what to do. Do not protect Dale. Do not protect yourself. Tell your father the truth. I love you. But I need you to do the right thing, Mom. I read that letter 3 times. Then I put it down on the workbench and just looked at it. Marion wrote this letter in March of 2022. She was still healthy then. She probably thought she had more time. She probably planned to either tell me herself or make sure Greg would tell me if she could not. She put the letter in the 2022 box and kept going. Then she got sick. Then the treatment started. Then the treatments stopped working. And by October she was gone. And Greg found the storage unit 2 months after that. He went there. He opened the boxes. He read this letter. His mother, from beyond the grave, told him in clear words to tell me the truth. And he did not. He read the letter and he put it back in the box, and he closed the lid and he walked out, and he called me the next Sunday like nothing had happened. "Dad, how are you doing? Dad, do not worry about Mom's stuff. I will handle it. Dad, let me take care of it." I thought about the last few days. How Greg had been calling more and more often. At first it was his usual Sunday call. Then it was a Wednesday check-in. Then it was almost every day. And the tone had been shifting. The first few calls after I told him about the storage unit were casual. Probably just some old furniture. "Dad, I can take care of it." Then when I told him I went to the unit and brought the boxes home, his voice changed. He started saying things like, "Dad, you should not be going through Mom's old stuff alone. It is not healthy." Then it was, "I can come this weekend and help you sort through everything." He was not trying to help me. He was trying to get in front of me. He wanted to be in the room when I opened those boxes, so he could control what I saw and what I did not see. Or maybe he wanted to get there before me and take out the letter. The letter that was sitting right here on my workbench. The letter his mother wrote telling him to do the one thing he refused to do. I picked up my phone and called Greg. He answered on the second ring. He was already talking before I could say anything. "Dad, I was just about to call you. I was thinking I could drive down Saturday and we could go through those boxes together. I do not want you sitting in the garage by yourself dealing with all of that." I said, "You went to the storage unit." He stopped. I let the silence sit there. I was not going to fill it for him. After about 5 seconds he said, "What do you mean?" I said, "Your mother wrote you a letter. I am looking at it right now. You went to the storage unit after she died. You saw what was inside. You read this letter, and you did not tell me." More silence. I could hear him breathing. I could hear something in the background, maybe his kids, maybe the television. Normal sounds from a normal house where my son had been sitting on a secret for 8 months. He said, "Dad, I can explain." I said, "When did you go?" He said, "Dad, listen to me. It is not what you think." I said, "When did you go, Greg?" He was quiet again. Then he said, "About 2 months after Mom passed. I was going through her credit card statements and I found the storage charge. Same as you. I went out there and I opened it and I saw the boxes." I said, "And you read the letter?" He says, I said, "And you saw what was inside those boxes?" He said, "I looked through some of them. Not all of them. I did not go through everything." I said, "But you saw enough." He did not answer that. I said, "Your mother told you to tell me. She put it in writing. She made it as clear as she possibly could, and you chose not to." He started talking faster. "Dad, I was trying to figure out the right time. You had just lost Mom. You were not in a good place. I did not want to dump all of this on you when you were still grieving. I was going to tell you. I just needed to find the right moment." I said nothing. I just held the phone and listened to my son explain why 8 months was not long enough to find the right moment to tell his father the truth. He kept going. He said he was worried about my health. He said he was worried about what I might do. He said he did not want me to do something rash. He said he was trying to protect me. I almost laughed. I did not, but I almost did, because I had heard that phrase before. I had heard it from Dale 23 years ago. "Let me handle this, Frankie. I am trying to protect you." I said one more thing. I said, "Greg, your mother wrote in that letter that Dale helped you with Lily's tuition and the down payment on the house. Is that true?" The silence this time was different. It was the silence of a man who just realized the floor under him is gone. He said, "Dad, that is a separate thing. That has nothing to do with this." I said, "It has everything to do with this." He started to say something else. I do not know what it was. I hung up. I put the phone down on the workbench next to Marion's letter. I sat in the folding chair. The garage was quiet. The boxes were in front of me. 15 of them I still had not opened. I thought about Greg as a baby. I thought about holding him in the hospital the day he was born, how small he was, how I promised myself I would never let anyone hurt him. I thought about teaching him to ride a bike in the driveway. I thought about driving him to college and shaking his hand in the parking lot because neither of us knew how to hug properly. I thought about my son sitting in that storage unit 8 months ago, reading his mother's letter, understanding exactly what Dale had done to me, and then closing the box and walking away. Not because he did not care about me, but because the truth was going to cost him something, and he decided the cost was too high. Marion kept this from me because she wanted me to have the full picture before I acted. She was protecting my position. She was giving me a weapon I could actually use. Greg kept this from me because he was protecting himself. There is a difference between those two things, and it is a difference I will never be able to unsee. I sat there for a while. Then I got up and walked back to the boxes. There were still several I had not opened. And somewhere in one of those boxes there was a cassette tape. A recording of a phone call between Marion and the woman from the law firm. Donna had told me about it. Marion had said she got what she needed from that call. I needed to hear that tape. But first I needed to let my hands stop shaking. And I needed to stop hearing my son's voice saying, "Dad, I can explain." Because right now that sentence was louder than anything else in this garage, and it was making it very hard to think. I walked inside and stood at the kitchen sink and ran cold water over my hands for a long time. I looked out the window at the backyard. The grass needed cutting. The fence needed a new post on the south side. Normal things. Things I knew how to fix. Then I dried my hands and went back to the garage. Because there was a tape in one of those boxes, and my wife had made sure it would be there when I needed it. And whatever was on that tape was going to tell me something I had been kept from knowing for 23 years. I started opening boxes, one by one, looking for it. Ray came over the next morning without me asking. He pulled into the driveway at 8:15, same old Silverado, same 2 cups of black coffee. He walked into the garage and set 1 cup on the workbench next to me and sat down in the other folding chair and did not say a word. I had been up since 5. I had not slept much. Every time I closed my eyes I saw Marion's handwriting on that letter to Greg. Every time I started to drift off I heard my son's voice saying, "Dad, I can explain." So I gave up on sleep around 4:30 and came out here and sat with the boxes. I had been looking for the tape. Donna told me about it. She said Marion had recorded a phone call with a man named Jeff Palmieri, a legal assistant who used to work at the firm that handled my injury case. Donna said Marion told her she got what she needed from that call. So the tape was in one of these boxes. I just had to find it. I went through 2004, 5, 6, 7, nothing. More documents, more copies, more of Marion's notes in the margins. I kept going. 8, 9, 10. Then I hit 2019, and there it was. It was a microcassette. The small kind, the size of a matchbox. The kind that fits in those little handheld recorders that reporters used to carry. It was in a plastic sandwich bag, taped to a piece of cardboard. And on the cardboard Marion had written a note. "This is my phone call with Jeff Palmieri. He was a legal assistant at the law office that handled Frank's injury case. He left that firm in 2009. He was willing to talk. This is the most important thing in this storage unit." She underlined that last sentence, twice. I held that little tape in my hand and looked at it for a long time. My wife's voice was on this tape. Marion had been gone for 8 months. I had not heard her voice in 8 months. I had started to forget the exact sound of it. Not the words she used or the things she said. Those I remembered. But the actual sound, the pitch, the way she dropped her voice a little at the end of a sentence, the way she said my name, that was fading. And now I was holding a tape with her voice on it. And I was not sure I was ready to hear it. Ray watched me staring at that cassette, and he said, "I brought something." He went out to his truck and came back with a small tape player. Old, beat up, the kind you would find at a yard sale. He said his wife used to record notes to herself on these things. Grocery lists and reminders and such. He kept the player after she passed. He set it on the workbench and plugged it into the power strip. I put the tape in. I looked at the play button. My finger hovered over it for maybe 10 seconds. Then I pressed it. There was a hiss, the sound of an open phone line. Then a woman's voice. Marion's voice. "Hello, is this Jeff Palmieri?" My chest locked up. That was her. That was exactly how she sounded. Calm, polite, a little formal the way she always was with people she did not know well. I had not heard that voice in 8 months and now it was coming out of a tape player in my garage and she was asking a question I never knew she asked. A man's voice came on. "Yeah, this is Jeff. Who is this?" Marion said, "My name is Marion Hollis. My husband is Frank Hollis. You worked on his workers' compensation case in 2001 at the Brannigan and Bennett firm. I am calling because I have some questions about that case." Palmieri got quiet. Then he said, "Mrs. Hollis, I left that firm over 10 years ago. I probably should not be talking about old cases." Marion said, "I understand that. But I think something happened in my husband's case that was not right. And I think you know what I am talking about." There was a long pause on the tape. I could hear Palmieri breathing. Then he said, Yeah, I think I do." Marion asked the first question. She said, "What was the total settlement amount approved by the insurance carrier for Frank's injury claim?" Palmieri said, "I should not be telling you this." But then he said, The carrier approved a settlement of $142,000. That is what they signed off on. That was the number. Marion said, the amount my husband received was $38,000. Can you tell me what happened to the rest? Palmieri said he did not know exactly what ended up in Frank's pocket, but he knew what the firm did with the difference. He said there was a separate arrangement between the managing partner, a man named Bennett, and my brother Dale. He said Dale had brought the case to the firm, and there was a side agreement for referral fees and consulting fees. He said those fees were calculated on the difference between the approved settlement and the amount paid out to the claimant. He said the firm took a cut and Dale got the larger share. He said at least $70,000 went to Dale. At least $70,000. Marion was quiet on the tape for a few seconds. Then she said, so my husband was injured at work, his case was worth $142,000, and his own brother arranged for most of that money to go to himself. Palmieri said, Mrs. Hollis, I was just a paralegal. I did not set this up. But I saw the paperwork. I filed the paperwork and I always felt bad about it. Your husband got hurt pretty bad, I remember his file. He deserved better than what he got. Marion said, yes, he did. Then she said, one more question. Did my husband know? Did he know the full amount? Palmieri said, I do not think so. The settlement documents he signed only showed the $38,000. The internal evaluation was never shared with him as far as I know. His brother handled all the communication. Your husband probably never saw the real number. Marion said, thank you for telling me this. Palmieri said, are you going to do something about it? Marion said, I am going to make sure my husband has what he needs when the time comes. The tape ended. Just a click and then static. I sat in that chair and I did not move. I could not. My wife's voice was still in my ears. She had been dead for 8 months and she was still fighting for me. She sat in that storage unit, or maybe in the kitchen, or maybe in the car, and she called a stranger and asked him to confirm what she already suspected. She did not cry. She did not raise her voice. She asked her questions, she got her answers, and she said thank you. That is who Marion was. She did not make a fuss. She just got it done. Ray reached over and pressed the stop button. He took the tape out carefully and put it back in the sandwich bag and set it on the workbench. He did not look at me. He looked at the tape. Then he said, your wife was smarter than both of us put together. I did not answer. I was thinking about the number. $70,000, at least $70,000. That is what Dale took, not the full $104,000 in the gap. The lawyer Bennett got his piece too. But Dale walked away with $70,000 of my money. Money that I was owed because a steel bracket fell on me and broke my back and tore up my shoulder so bad I still cannot reach a high shelf without pain shooting down my arm. $70,000. In 2001. You know what that was worth to a family like mine in 2001. Greg was 17, about to start thinking about college. Meg was 12. Marion was doing part-time bookkeeping to help cover the gap between what I made at the plant and what it cost to keep a family of 4 going. We were not poor, but we were tight. Every month was a puzzle of which bills to pay first and what could wait. $70,000 would have changed that. Not made us rich. Just made it so Marion did not have to sit at the kitchen table on the first of every month with a calculator and a worried look on her face. And Dale took it. My brother. The guy who stood behind me while I signed those papers with my arm in a sling and said, good job. Frankie, you did the right thing. He took $70,000 from me and bought himself an investment property in New Jersey and spent the next 23 years acting like he was the generous older brother. The Christmas gifts. The birthday cards with checks inside. Helping Greg with the tuition. All of it was my money coming back to my family in little pieces, dressed up as Dale's kindness. I stood up and walked to the garage door. I looked out at the street. Mrs. Patterson across the road was watering her flowers. A kid rode by on a bicycle. Normal morning, normal world. But nothing was normal anymore. I was standing in my garage holding a tape that proved my brother stole from me while I was injured, and my wife had spent years building a case against him. And my son had known about it for 8 months and said nothing. I want to stop here for a second. Before I tell you what happened next, I want to ask you something. Because I have been carrying this by myself and Ray has been here, but he is not the talking type, and I just need to put this question out there. If you found out that your own family, your brother, your son, knew that someone had taken money from you, money you were owed, money that would have made your life different, and they chose not to tell you, could you forgive that? If you think Frank had a right to know all of this, just put the word yes in the comments. If you think Marion should have told him sooner, tell me that too. One word is enough. I just need to know I am not crazy for feeling the way I feel right now. Okay, Let me keep going. I walked back to the workbench and picked up my phone. I sat down in the chair. Ray looked at me and I could tell he was about to say something like maybe wait, maybe cool off first. But he did not say it. He saw my face and he kept quiet. I called Greg. He picked up on the first ring this time. He must have been sitting with the phone in his hand, waiting. He did not start talking right away like he usually does. He just said, "Hi, Dad." I said I played the tape. He said, "What tape?" I said the tape your mother made. The phone call she recorded with the man from the law firm. The one who confirmed that Dale took $70,000 from my injury settlement. Greg did not say anything for a long time. I could hear him swallow. I said, "I am going to ask you one question and I want the truth. How much did you take from Dale?" He said, "Dad, it is not like that. It was not like he was paying me off. He was just being generous. He is family." I said, "How much?" He said, "Dad." I said, "Greg, how much?" He went quiet again. Then he started talking. Slowly, like he was pulling teeth out of his own mouth. He said Dale offered to help with Emma's school. Emma is Greg's oldest, my granddaughter. She got into a private school in Allentown, good academics, good programs. But tuition was about $20,000 a year. Greg and his wife could not swing it. Dale said he would cover it. He covered 4 years. That is about $80,000. I let that number sit in the air. Then Greg said Dale also helped him with the down payment on a rental property he bought in Whitehall about 6 years ago. $35,000 for the down payment. Dale said it was an investment in Greg's future. He said family helps family. Family helps family. Dale said that. The same man who took $70,000 from his injured brother said family helps family while handing Greg money that was never his to give. I added it up. 80 plus 35. $115,000. My son had taken $115,000 from Dale over the past 10 years. And then he found out where that money really came from. And he looked at that letter from his mother. And he decided that telling me the truth was not worth the risk of me finding out what he had taken. I said, "So Dale gave you $115,000. And then you found your mother's storage unit. And you read her letter. And you understood that the money Dale gave you came from the money Dale stole from me. And you put the letter back in the box, and you closed the lid and you went home." Greg said, "Dad, I did not know where Dale's money came from when I took it. I swear I did not know. I only found out when I opened those boxes." I said, "That is right. You only found out 8 months ago. And in 8 months you did not tell me. Your mother asked you to tell me. She put it in writing. She made it as plain as she knew how. And you chose not to do it." Greg's voice changed. It got smaller. He said, "I was going to tell you. I was working up to it. I just did not know how." I said, "You were not working up to anything, Greg. You were waiting. You were waiting for me to get old enough or tired enough that you could come over one Saturday and quietly take those boxes out of the garage and put them in a dumpster somewhere. You were waiting for this to go away." He did not deny it. That is the part that got me. He did not say, "No, Dad, that is not true." He just went quiet. And in that silence I heard everything I needed to hear. I said something to him then. I had not planned to say it. I did not think about it first. It just came out the same way the truth always comes out, when you are too tired to hold it back anymore. I said, "Your mother was saving things for me. She was putting them away, one piece at a time, so that when the day came, I would have everything I needed. She did it because she loved me. She did it because she thought I deserved the truth even if she could not hand it to me herself." I said, "You were not saving things from me. You were hiding things from me. And the difference between those two things is the difference between your mother and you." The line was quiet. I said, "She told you to tell me, Greg. She wrote it down. She said it was your responsibility as my son. And you read that and you walked away. Not because you were protecting me. Because you were protecting yourself. You were protecting the money. You were protecting the house in Whitehall and Emma's tuition. And the life you built with Dale's help. You did not want me to find out what Dale did because then I would find out what you took. And you could not stand the idea of me knowing that." Greg said, "Dad, I am sorry." I said, "I know you are. But that does not change what you did." He started to say something else. I do not know what it was going to be. Maybe another apology, maybe another excuse. I did not wait to find out. I hung up. I put the phone face down on the workbench. I sat there. The garage was completely quiet. Ray was next to me. He had not moved during the entire call. He had not made a sound. He just sat there the way he always does when things get heavy present. Steady. Not trying to fix anything, just making sure I was not alone in the room. After a while Ray said, "You okay?" I said, "No." He nodded. He picked up his coffee, which had gone cold a long time ago, and he took a sip of it anyway. I thought about Marion. I thought about her sitting somewhere, maybe in the car, maybe at Donna's kitchen table, holding a little recorder up to the phone and asking a stranger to confirm that her husband's brother had robbed him. I thought about the sound of her voice on that tape, how steady it was, how she did not shake, did not cry, did not lose her temper. She just asked her questions and said thank you and hung up and filed the tape in a box marked 2019 and drove to the storage unit and put it inside and locked the door and drove home and made dinner and sat across from me and said nothing. She did all of that for me, and she never told me. And my son found out about all of it and he never told me either. For different reasons. For completely different reasons. But the result was the same. I was the last person to know my own story. I have been thinking about that a lot. What it means to be the last one to know something that happened to you. Not something that happened to someone else. Something that happened to your own body, your own money, your own family. Everyone around you knew. Your wife knew. Your son knew. Your brother knew, obviously. The lawyer knew. The paralegal knew. Done a new part of it. And you, the guy it actually happened to, the guy with the bad shoulder and the $38,000 check, and the 23 years of believing his brother did right by him. You were the only one in the dark. That is a particular kind of feeling. I do not have a good word for it. It is not just anger. Anger is clean. Anger you can use. This was something muddier. It was like finding out that the house you have been living in for decades has a room you never knew about, and everyone else has been walking in and out of that room your whole life, and nobody ever thought to hand you the key. Ray stood up and stretched. He put his hands in his pockets. He looked at the row of boxes along the wall, and then he looked at me. He said, "So what are you going to do?" I said, "I do not know yet." He said, "You have got everything now. The documents, the letters, the tape. Your son admitted what he took. You know what Dale did, and you know what Greg did. There is nothing left to find." I said, "There is one thing left to do." Ray looked at me. I said, "I need to go see Dale." Ray was quiet for a second. Then he said, "When I said, I do not today. Not tomorrow. I need to think about what I want to say to him. I am not going there angry. I am not going to yell at him or threaten him or ask him for money. I am not going there to get something from him. I am going there to tell him something. I want him to look at me and hear me say that I know. That is all. I want him to know that the secret is done." Ray said, "You want me to drive?" I said, "Yeah. I think I do." He said, "Okay, you tell me when." Then he walked to his truck and left. And I sat in the garage alone with the boxes and the tape player and the cold coffee and the silence. And I thought about the fact that my wife's voice was on a cassette in a plastic bag on my workbench. And she was still trying to help me even now. Even from wherever she was, and I had not been able to help her when she was right next to me because nobody let me know she needed help. I picked up the phone one more time that night. Not to call Greg. Not to call Dale. I called Meg. She picked up after 3 rings. She said, "Hey Dad, everything okay?" Said, "Meggie, I need you to come home. Something has happened and I need to tell you about it in person." She did not ask me what it was. She did not say I am busy or can it wait. She said, "I will book a flight tonight. I will be there tomorrow." I said, "Thank you." She said, "Dad, are you safe?" I said, "Yeah, I am safe. I am just not okay." She said, "I will be there tomorrow." I hung up and sat in the kitchen. The table was in front of me clean, wiped down, everything in its place. But I knew now that a clean table does not mean a clean life. It just means you have not looked underneath it yet. The morning after I hung up on Greg, I was sitting at the kitchen table before the sun came up. 5:30, coffee in my hand, yard outside the window still gray. I had slept maybe 2 hours total. Not because I was angry. The anger had burned through me the night before and left something else behind. Something quieter. Something that felt more like a job that needed doing. I sat there and I drank my coffee, and I thought about what I had. I had documents going back 23 years. I had letters between my brother and a lawyer I never met. I had bank records and property filings and insurance evaluations. I had a cassette tape with my dead wife's voice on it. I had a letter she wrote to my son telling him to do the right thing. I had my son's admission that he took $115,000 from Dale over the past decade. I had all the pieces, but they were scattered across 18 boxes in my garage, mixed in with Marion's notes and sticky tabs and photocopies of photocopies. If someone walked in there right now and looked at that mess, they would not know where to start. I needed to put it in order. I needed to lay it out so that anyone looking at it could see what happened, when it happened, and who did what. That is what I know how to do. I spent 20 years in the Navy keeping inventory systems straight, and 18 years after that running a production floor where every part had a number and every number had a place. I am not a detective. I am not a lawyer. But I know how to organize information so it tells a clear story. And that is what I was going to do today. Ray showed up at 7. I did not call him, he just came. He had 2 cups of black coffee from the gas station and a box of donuts from the place on Hamilton. He walked into the garage, set the food down on the workbench, looked at me, and said, "Ready?" I said yeah. We started by pulling everything out of every box. All 18 of them. We laid the contents on the garage floor in rough piles by year. It took over an hour just to get everything out and sorted. The garage floor looked like a filing cabinet had exploded. Then I went inside and got a roll of brown packing paper from the closet. The big kind, 3 feet wide. I tore off a piece about 12 feet long and taped it to the garage floor. I took a black marker and drew a straight line down the middle, left to right. On the far left I wrote April 2001. That was the day the crane bracket came down on me at the plant. On the far right I wrote October 2023. That was the day Marion died. Then we started filling in the line. April 2001. Workplace injury. Fractured vertebrae, torn rotator cuff. Admitted to St. Luke's overnight. May 2001. Dale offers to handle the case. Introduces me to his lawyer friend Tom Brannigan. I signed paperwork giving Dale authority to act as my representative. June 2001. First letter between Dale and Peter Kessler, the lawyer at Brannigan's firm who actually handled the money. Letter discusses settlement structure and Dale's consulting fee. August 2001. Settlement finalized. Insurance company approved $142,000. I received $38,000. The difference, $104,000, was split between Dale and the firm. Dale's share was at least $70,000. March 2003. Dale purchases investment property in Burlington County, New Jersey. Down payment $95,000. We kept going. The middle section of the timeline was thinner because that was the decade where nothing happened on the surface. Dale and I saw each other at holidays. He sent birthday cards. He started helping Greg with money around 2013-14. Those years were quiet. The crime was done. The money was spent. Life moved on. Then the timeline picked up again. October 2014. Marion finds the original insurance evaluation report in the basement filing cabinet. She sees the number. $142,000. She knows I only got 38. She writes a note to herself. The numbers do not match. That was the starting gun. That was when my wife began. 2015-16. Marion begins collecting documents. She makes copies at the school where Donna works. She starts visiting the storage unit on Route 9. She is careful. She is patient. She does not tell me. 2017-18. Marion tracks down Jeff Palmieri, the former paralegal at the law firm. She asks Donna to make the initial phone call. 2019. Marion records her phone conversation with Palmieri. He confirms the full settlement amount and Dale's cut. She files the tape in the storage unit. 2022, March. Marion writes the letter to Greg. She puts it in the box marked 22. She is still healthy at this point. She probably thinks she has time. 2023, January. Marion is diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. 2023, about mid-year. Marion's health declines. She tells Donna that if Frank finds the storage unit, Donna should be the one to explain why she did it this way. 2023, October. Marion dies. 2023, December. Greg finds the storage unit receipt while going through Marion's credit card statement goes to the unit. He opens the boxes. He reads the letter. He does not tell me. 2024, present. I find the $47 charge. I go to the unit. I bring the boxes home. I open them. Ray and I stood there looking at the timeline on the floor. 23 years, laid out on brown paper in black marker. A straight line from the day I got hurt to right now. Ray put his hands in his pockets and looked at it for a long time. Then he said, "Your wife spent almost 10 years doing what somebody should have done in 2001. I knew what he meant. He meant me. If I had looked at those settlement papers more carefully, if I had asked to see the insurance company's evaluation, if I had hired my own lawyer instead of trusting Dale's guy, Marion would not have had to do any of this. She would not have had to spend years sneaking around, copying documents, recording phone calls, driving to a storage unit on Route 9 to add another piece to a puzzle that should never have existed. But I did not do those things. I trusted my brother. And Marion spent a decade cleaning up the mess that trust made." I did not say any of this out loud. But Ray knew. He has known me for over 40 years. He does not need me to say things for him to hear them. After a while I went inside and called Meg. My daughter lives in Charlotte, North Carolina. She works at a hospital doing administrative stuff. She has a 12-year-old daughter named Sophie. Meg and I do not talk as often as I probably should, maybe twice a month. But when we do talk, she is the one person in my family who says what she actually thinks. She does not manage me. She does not try to steer the conversation. She just talks to me like I am a grown man who can handle the truth, which apparently is more than most people in my life have been willing to do. I said, Maggie, I need you to come home. There are some things I need to tell you in person. It is about your mother and it is about your Uncle Dale, and it is not something I can do over the phone. She did not ask what it was. She did not say, can it wait, or is it really that serious? She said, I will be there tomorrow afternoon. I will get Sophie set up with her friend's family and I will book a flight tonight. She landed at Lehigh Valley International the next day around 2. I picked her up at the curb. She had one bag. She looked tired but steady. She hugged me in the car, which she does not always do, and she said, okay, Dad, whenever you are ready. I took her to the garage. She stood in the doorway for a second and looked at the boxes along the wall, and the brown paper timeline on the floor, and the stacks of documents on the workbench. She did not say anything. She just walked in and started reading. I let her go through it at her own pace. She started at the left end of the timeline, 2001, and worked her way right. She picked up the settlement agreement and read it. She picked up the insurance evaluation and read it. She read the letters between Dale and Kessler. She read the property records. She read Marion's notes in the margins. She read the letter Marion wrote to Greg. That one she read twice. I did not play the tape for her. I thought about it. But that was Marion's voice. It was the last new thing I had of her. Hearing it in the garage with Ray was one thing. Playing it for someone else, even Meg, felt like giving away something I was not ready to share. So instead I told Meg what was on the tape. I repeated it word for word, as close as I could remember. Paul Mary confirming the full amount. Paul Mary saying Dale got at least $70,000. Marion saying thank you at the end, her voice calm and even, the way she always when she had already decided what she was going to do. Meg listened to all of it. She sat on the folding chair with her hands on her knees and she listened. When I was done, she was quiet for a long time. She looked at the timeline on the floor. She looked at the boxes. She looked at me. She did not cry. She did not say, oh my God, or I cannot believe this. She did not make excuses for Greg or try to explain what Dale must have been thinking. She did not try to soften it or wrap it in something easier to hold. She said, Dad, you deserve to know. And you deserve to decide what happens next. I looked at my daughter and I felt something shift inside my chest. Not a big dramatic thing. Just a small quiet thing like a lock clicking open. For the past week I had been finding out that the people closest to me had been keeping things from me. My wife. My son. My brother. Everyone had a reason. Some of those reasons were better than others. But in every case, somebody else decided what I should and should not know about my own life. And here was Meg. Not deciding for me. Not protecting me from anything. Just saying you have the right to know, and you have the right to choose. That is all I needed to hear. I did not know it until she said it, but that was the thing I had been waiting for someone to say ever since I opened the first box. Meg asked me a question then. She said, are you going to go see Dale? I said yes. She said, do you want me to come with you? I thought about it. Part of me wanted her there. Having Meg next to me would have made it easier. But this was not about easier. This was between me and Dale. It started with the two of us in his kitchen 23 years ago. Me with my arm in a sling signing papers I did not read. It needed to end with the two of us. I said no. This one I do by myself. But I need you to know everything because when this is done, I am going to give these boxes to you. All of them. You are the one I trust to hold on to this. Meg nodded. She said, okay, Dad. I will keep them safe. That night after Meg went to bed in her old room, I sat in the living room with Marion's notebook. The one from the storage unit. The one with the lined pages and the blue pen and Marion's handwriting getting a little less steady as the pages went on. I turned to the last few pages. These were written later than the rest. The handwriting was shaky. Some of the letters did not connect the way they should. Marion wrote these when she was already sick. When the treatments were not working and she knew they were not working and she kept going to the storage unit anyway. Adding one more thing, one more note, because she was running out of time and she was not finished. The last entry was not a note about a document or a date. It was written to me. It said, Frank, you are the most honest man I have ever known. Your problem was never that you were not smart enough. Your problem is that you trust the people around you too much. Dale did not deserve your trust. I spent years putting these things together. Not so you would hate anyone, so you would know what was taken from you. You have the right to know. I wish I could have told you myself. I closed the notebook. I turned off the lamp. I sat there in the dark living room for I do not know how long. The house was quiet. Meg was upstairs sleeping. The boxes were in the garage. The timeline was on the floor. Everything was laid out. Everything was in order. Marion could not finish this. She ran out of time. But she got close. She got so close that all I had to do was pick up where she left off. The next morning I got up early. I showered. I put on a clean shirt and a pair of khakis. I made coffee and poured it into a travel mug. I went to the garage and took a manila folder off the workbench. Inside it I had put copies of the key documents. The insurance evaluation showing $142,000. The settlement agreement showing $38,000. The letters between Dale and Kessler. The bank transfer confirmation. A printed transcript I had typed up of the recording, every word Palmieri said, every word Marion said. I did not take the originals. Those stayed in the garage. Those were Meg's now. I put the folder on the passenger seat of my truck. I backed out of the driveway. Meg was standing at the kitchen window. She raised her hand. I raised mine. Then I turned onto the road and headed for the turnpike. New Jersey is about an hour and 40 minutes from my house, depending on traffic. Dale lives in a town called Morristown, south of Trenton. Nice neighborhood. Bigger houses than mine. Better cars in the driveways. He bought that place with money that came from somewhere, and now I knew where. I drove with the radio off. I did not need noise. I did not need to rehearse what I was going to say. I had been rehearsing it in my head for a week, ever since I opened the first box. I was not going there to yell. I was not going there to threaten him or ask for money or tell him I was going to sue him. I was going there to stand in front of my brother and say one thing. I know what you did, and it is not a secret anymore. That is all. That is the whole thing. Not revenge, not a lawsuit, just the truth said out loud to the person who thought it would stay buried forever. The turnpike was mostly clear. I kept the truck at 65. The folder sat on the seat next to me. My hands were steady on the wheel. Dale's house is on a street called Brittle Path Lane. I am not making that up. Brittle Path. The kind of name that sounds like money even before you see the houses. And the houses back it up. Set back from the road, good-sized lots, mature trees. 2-car garages with doors that actually match. Not mansions. But the kind of places where you look at them and think, whoever lives here never had to pick which bill to pay first. I parked on the street about 3 houses down. I did not plan that. I just took my foot off the gas and the truck stopped and I sat there. The manila folder was on the passenger seat. I had driven 3.5 hours with the radio off, and I had not rehearsed a single word. I thought I would. I thought somewhere around exit 9 I would start putting sentences together in my head, planning an opening line, figuring out what to say if he denied it. But I did not. My mind was quiet the whole way down. Not empty. Just quiet. Like everything that needed to be said had already settled into place, and I just had to open my mouth when the time came. I picked up the folder. I got out of the truck. I walked up the sidewalk to Dale's house. His front yard had one of those decorative stone borders around the flower beds. The bushes were trimmed. The porch had a couple of wicker chairs on it with cushions that matched. There was a doormat that said welcome. I stood on it and rang the bell. I heard footsteps inside. Then the door opened. Dale, 72 years old. White hair, thin on top, come back. He was wearing a plaid flannel shirt and khaki pants and slippers. He looked like what he was. A retired man in a nice house on a Tuesday morning with nothing on his schedule. He saw me and his face went through about 3 things in 2 seconds. Surprise first. Then something I would call a quick calculation. The way a man looks when he is trying to figure out why someone is standing where they should not be. Then a third thing. Something that looked almost like relief. Like he had been carrying a suitcase for a long time and somebody had just told him he could finally set it down. He said, "Frank, you want to come in and sit down?" I said no. "I will say what I came to say right here." He looked at me for a second. Then he looked at the folder in my hand. His eyes stayed on it for a beat too long. Then he leaned his shoulder against the door frame and put his hands in his pockets and he said, in a voice that was too even, too ready, "You found what Marion left." That was not a question. He did not say, "What do you mean?" or "What are you talking about?" He said, "You found what Marion left," the same way you would say "looks like rain," and I understood right then that Dale had been expecting this. Maybe not today. Maybe not this year. But he knew this day existed somewhere out ahead of him, and he had made his peace with it a long time ago. He had made his peace with stealing from me, and he had made his peace with getting caught. And both of those things sat in him with the same weight, which is to say not much weight at all. I opened the folder. I took out the insurance evaluation, the one that showed the full settlement amount. I held it up so he could see the number, $142,000. I said, "You told me the most I could get was $38,000. You looked me in the eye in your kitchen while I had my arm in a sling, and you said that was the best deal your guy could get." Dale looked at the paper. He did not reach for it. He just looked. I pulled out the next document. The letter between Dale and the lawyer Bennett, the one that laid out the fee structure. Consulting fees. Referral fees. The words were right there in black ink. I pointed to the line that described how the difference between the approved settlement and the amount paid to the claimant would be allocated. I said, you and Bennett split the difference. You took at least $70,000. From your own brother. While I was hurt, Dale did not look away. He did not blink. He did not shake his head or hold up his hands, or say, now wait a minute. He just stood there against the door frame with his hands in his pockets, and he looked at me the way you look at a bill you already knew was coming. Then he said 6 words that I will hear for the rest of my life. I always figured you would find out. I want to tell you what that sentence did to me. It did not make me want to hit him. I am 67 years old, and I have not hit anyone since I was in the Navy, and I was not about to start on my brother's front porch in New Jersey. It did not make me want to yell either. What it did was worse. It made me feel small. Because the way Dale said it, the tone, the shrug that was hiding behind the words, it told me that my pain was something he had already processed. He had already forgiven himself. He had already decided that what he did was not that bad, or that it was a long time ago, or that I ended up fine anyway. He had folded the whole thing into a version of his life that he could live with, and my feelings about it were just a minor adjustment he always knew he would have to make someday. That is what made me the angriest. Not the money. The fact that he was ready. The fact that I had spent the last week with my guts ripped open, barely sleeping, listening to my dead wife's voice on a tape recorder, finding out my son lied to me, driving 170 miles to stand on this porch, and Dale was leaning on his door frame like I had come to borrow his lawn mower. I took a breath, kept my voice level. I said when I got hurt, I could not lift my arm above my head. I could not pick up Meg. She was 12. She wanted me to carry her on my shoulders the way I used to, and I could not do it. I could not do it because a steel bracket fell on me and broke things inside my body that never healed right. And you came to me and said, let me handle this, Frankie. And I let you, because you were my brother and I trusted you more than I trusted anyone except Marion. Dale shifted his weight but did not speak. I said, you took $70,000 from that trust. And then you spent 23 years spending it in front of me. This house, that car in the driveway, the trips to Florida every winter, and the whole time you played the generous big brother, helping Greg with tuition, putting money into his house. You were not being generous, Dale. You were using my money to keep my son quiet. You did not even know you were doing that part, but that is what happened. Greg took your help, and then when he found out where it came from, he could not tell me because it would mean giving it back. You did not just steal from me. You set up a situation where my own son had a reason to lie to me. Dale's face changed a little, not a lot, just around the eyes, a tightness that was not there before. I said, I am not here to ask for the money. I know it is gone. I know the statute of limitations ran out a long time ago. I am not going to sue you or call the police or put you on the news. I did not come here for any of that. He waited. I said, I came here so you could hear me say this to your face. I know what you did. Marion figured it out. She spent years collecting every piece of paper, every letter, every record. She recorded a phone call with the paralegal from your lawyer's office. She put it all in a storage unit, and she kept paying for it month after month until she died. My wife spent the last 10 years of her life building a case against you because she loved me enough to make sure I would never have to take your word for anything ever again. And she was smarter than you ever gave her credit for. Dale's mouth moved. He started to say something. Then he stopped. Then he started again. He said, Marion called me. I was not expecting that. I stood there with the folder in my hand, and I felt the ground shift under me one more time. Dale said, it was before she got real sick. Maybe early 23, I do not remember exactly. She called me on a Tuesday evening. She said she knew everything. She said she had the documents and the recording. She said she was going to tell you. He stopped and looked past me at the street for a second. Then he looked back. He said, I told her to let it go. I said, Frank is doing fine. He is retired. The money is gone. There is nothing to gain from dragging this up now. I told her it would only hurt everyone. I said, what did she say? Dale was quiet for a moment. Then he said, she said, Dale, Frank has the right to know what happened in his own life. You do not get to decide what he knows and what he does not know. He said, then she hung up. And I never heard from her again. I stood on that porch and I saw something I had not seen before. A picture of Marion in the last year of her life. A picture I did not know existed until this moment. My wife sitting in our kitchen, or maybe in the car, or maybe in the bedroom after I had gone to sleep, picking up the phone and calling the man who stole from her husband. not to threaten cry, not to tell him, clearly and simply, that the decision about what I knew was not his to make. And then hanging up and going on with her day, going to her doctor appointments, sitting across from me at dinner, driving to the storage unit to add one more piece to the file, carrying all of it without putting any of it down. She called him, she told him to his face, and he asked her to let it go, and she said no. That was my wife. I did not respond to what Dale told me. I did not need to. He had just given me the last piece without knowing it. Marion did not just build a case. She served notice. She told the man who did this that it was over, that the secret was not going to hold. And then she ran out of time before she could tell me herself, but she made sure everything was in place so that I could find my way to this porch on my own. I closed the folder. I said, I am not the same person I was 23 years ago, Dale. I was the kind of man who let other people handle things for him because I thought that was what trusting people meant. I do not do that anymore. Marion made sure of that. I looked at my brother, 72 years old, white hair, slippers, standing in the door of a house that was bought, at least in part, with money that should have been mine. He looked old. He looked tired. He did not look like a villain. He looked like a man who did a rotten thing a long time ago and spent the rest of his life trying to outrun it without ever actually running. I said one last thing. I said we are not the same kind of people, Dale. I used to think we were. I do not think that anymore. Then I turned around and walked back to my truck. Behind me I heard him say my name, Frank. Just my name. Not a sentence. Not an explanation. Not an apology. Just my name hanging in the air between his porch and the street. I did not turn around. I opened the door, got in, put the folder on the seat, started the engine, and pulled away from the curb. In the side mirror I could see him still standing in the doorway. He watched the truck until I turned the corner. Then he was gone. I got on the turnpike heading north. The road was open. Late morning traffic had thinned out. I drove for about 20 minutes before I picked up the phone. I did not call Meg. I did not call Greg. I called Ray. He answered on the second ring. He said, yeah. I said, Marion called him. Before she died. She called Dale and told him she knew everything. She told him she was going to tell me. He tried to talk her out of it. She told him he does not get to decide what I know. Then she hung up on him. Ray was quiet on the other end. I could hear the sound of a TV in the background, something with a laugh track. Then the sound went away like he hit the mute button. He said, your wife was tougher than both of us. I almost laughed. I did not quite get there, but I came close. It was the first time in over a week that anything had come close to funny. Ray said, you heading home? I said, yeah. He said, you get there safe, call me. I said, I will. He said, Frank, yeah. He said, you did what you needed to do. It is done now. You are not in the dark anymore. I said, I know. I hung up and kept driving. The road stretched out in front of me, flat and straight through central Jersey, the kind of road I had driven 100 times going to see Dale for holidays and birthdays and barbecues, all those years when I thought my brother was the most generous man I knew. I drove past the same exits, the same rest stops, the same signs for towns I had never visited. Everything looked the same as it always had. But I was not the same man in the same truck. Something had shifted, not in a big dramatic way, in a smaller way, like a bone that had been set wrong for 23 years and somebody had finally put it back where it belonged. It still hurt. It was going to hurt for a while. But it was in the right place now. My right shoulder ached. It does that when I drive too long or when the weather is changing or sometimes for no reason at all. 23 years of aching. I moved my hand on the steering wheel to take the pressure off and I kept going. The folder sat on the passenger seat. The copies were inside it. The originals were back home in the garage, in the boxes, on the shelves, where Meg could keep them safe. I did not need to carry everything with me. I just needed to carry enough. Somewhere around the Delaware River crossing I rolled the window down a couple of inches. The air was cool, and it smelled like the river and like fall coming on. I thought about Marion. I thought about her sitting somewhere with a phone in her hand, calling the man who cheated her husband, and saying in that calm, steady voice of hers, you do not get to decide what Frank knows. She said that. She said my name to Dale, and she used it like a shield, and she did not back down. I closed the window when I got to the Pennsylvania side. I still had about an hour to go. The boxes were waiting. Meg was waiting. The house was waiting. And for the first time in a long time, I was not going home to a clean table with nothing on it. I was going home to a mess that finally made sense. And that was better. That was a lot better. I pulled into the driveway around 6:30. The light was on in the kitchen. I could see Meg moving around inside, and for a second I just sat in the truck with the engine off and watched her through the window. She was at the stove. She had her hair pulled back the way Marion used to when she cooked. I did not know if Meg knew she did that. Probably not. Some things just passed from mother to daughter without anyone noticing. I went inside. I put my keys on the table. Meg had made chicken and rice and green beans. Simple. The kind of meal Marion would have made on a Tuesday. The kind of meal that does not ask anything of you except to sit down and eat it. Meg set a plate in front of me and poured me a glass of water and sat down across the table. She did not ask how it went. She did not say, "So what happened?" She just sat there and let me get to it in my own time. I ate a few bites. Then I started talking. I told her everything. Dale opening the door. The look on his face when he saw the folder. The way he leaned against the door frame like he had been expecting me for 23 years. I told her what he said. I always figured you would find out. I told her how that sentence felt, not like a confession, more like a man checking something off a list. Then I told her the part about Marion. I said, "Dale told me your mother called him before she got sick. Or maybe she already knew she was sick." He said she told him she had everything. The documents, the recording, all of it. She told him she was going to tell me. He tried to talk her out of it. Said it would only hurt people. "And your mother said you do not get to decide what Frank knows." Meg was very still. She had her fork in her hand, but she was not eating. She looked at me and then she looked down at the table and then she looked back at me. She said, "When did she make that call?" I said, "Dale thinks it was early 23, before the diagnosis. Or maybe just after." He was not sure. Meg said, "So after she found out she might be dying, she did not fall apart. She picked up the phone and called the man who cheated you and told him it was over." I said, "That is what she did." Meg was quiet for a few seconds. Then she said 2 words, "That's Mom." She was right. That was Marion. That was exactly who she was. She did not make scenes. She did not raise her voice. She just did what needed to be done, and then she came home and made dinner and sat across from me and carried it all by herself because she thought that was her job. After dinner, we went out to the garage. The boxes were still lined up along the wall. The brown paper timeline was still taped to the floor. Everything was where we left it. I stood there for a minute looking at all of it. 18 boxes. 23 years of my life that someone else had to put in order because I did not know it was out of order. My wife's handwriting on every label, every sticky note, every margin. She had touched every single piece of paper in this garage. Some of them she had touched dozens of times, going back and adding notes, cross-referencing dates, making sure nothing was missing. I said, "I am not going to take this to a lawyer. I am not going to file anything. Marion did not put this together so I could sue somebody. She put it together so I would know. And now I know." Meg nodded. I said, "But I want you to take these boxes home with you." She looked at me. I said, "You are the only person in this family who does not owe anybody anything. You did not know what Dale did. You did not take his money. You did not read your mother's letter and decide to keep quiet. You are clean, Meg. These boxes belong with someone clean. And if there ever comes a day when they need to come out again, for whatever reason, I want them to be in your hands. Not mine, yours." She said, "Are you sure you do not want to keep them here?" I said, "I have seen everything that is in them. Every page, every letter, every number. I do not need to look at them every day. I just need to know they are somewhere safe." She said, "Okay, Dad. I will take them." Then I said the thing about Greg. I had been thinking about it the whole drive home. 3.5 hours of thinking. I said, "Your brother and I are not done. He is still my son. That does not change. But the way things are between us, that has changed. He took $115,000 from Dale over the past 10 years. He found out where that money came from and he chose not to tell me. Your mother wrote him a letter asking him to do the right thing, and he put it back in the box and walked away. I understand why he did it. I do. He was scared. He did not want me to look at him differently. But understanding why someone does a thing and being okay with it are 2 different things. And I am not okay with it." Meg said, "Do you want me to talk to him?" I said, "No. He knows what he did. Whether he comes to me or not, that is up to him. But I am not going to pretend everything is fine. I spent 23 years pretending everything was fine because nobody told me it was not. I am done pretending." Meg did not push it. She just said, "Okay." Later that night, after Meg had gone upstairs to bed, I sat in the living room. I turned off the overhead light and left just the small lamp on the side table. The house was quiet, the kind of quiet that used to bother me in the months after Marion died. But tonight it felt different. Not empty. Just still. I had Marian's notebook in my hands. The one with the blue cover. The one that said for Frank on the inside front page. I had read most of it already. But I had not read the very last page. I had been saving it. I do not know why. Maybe because I knew that once I read the last thing she wrote, There would be nothing new from her ever again. I turned to the last page. Her handwriting was unsteady. The letters leaned in different directions. Some of the words were hard to make out. She wrote this near the end. Maybe in bed. Maybe at the kitchen table on a morning when her hands were not cooperating. But she wrote it. She got through every word. Said Frank, the best thing I ever did in my life was marry you. The hardest thing I ever did was keep all of this from you. I do not know what you will think of me when you find these boxes. But if you are reading this page, it means you made it to the end. I want you to know something. You are not stupid. You did not do anything wrong. You just trusted the people around you too much. And the way I loved you was by standing guard in the places you could not see. Forgive me for not telling you myself. You deserve to know everything. Love always, Marion. I closed the notebook. I put it on my knee. I sat there for a long time. I thought about what she said. You just trusted the people around you too much. She was right. That was my problem. Not them, Dale. Not Greg. My problem was that I handed pieces of my life to other people and assumed they would take care of them the way I would. And most of them did not. Marion did. Ray did. Meg does. But the others, the ones I trusted the most, the ones I should have been able to count on without thinking, they took what I gave them and used it for themselves. Marion saw that. She saw it clearly. And instead of telling me, which would have broken something between us that she did not want to break, she built a safety net in a storage unit on Route 9, and she kept it there for years, waiting for the day I would need it. I do not know if that was the right way to love someone. I really do not. Part of me wishes she had just told me back in 2014 when she first found that insurance report. We could have dealt with it together. But that was not Marion. She did not hand you a problem. She handed you a solution. And by the time I found these boxes, the solution was complete. All I had to do was read it. I stood up. I walked into the kitchen. I made a cup of coffee even though it was almost 11 at night. I sat down at the table and looked out the window at the dark yard. My table was clean. It is always clean. I wiped it down every night, same as I have done for years. But now I understood something I did not understand before. A clean table does not mean everything is in order. It just means you have not looked at what is underneath it yet. And once you do look, once you pull it all out and spread it across the floor and read every word and follow every number and listen to every voice, you do not get to put it back. It stays with you. All of it. But here is the thing. I would rather have all of it than have nothing. I would rather know the whole ugly truth about my brother and my son and my wife's secret life in that storage unit than spend another 23 years thinking everything was fine. The truth did not make me happy, but it made me whole. And at 67, whole is worth more than happy. The boxes will go home with Meg tomorrow. She will keep them in her closet or her attic or wherever she puts things that matter. The timeline on the garage floor, I will roll that up and put it in one of the boxes. The tape, the one with Marion's voice on it, I am keeping that. That stays with me. Not because I need it as evidence, because it is the last new sound my wife will ever make in my life, and I am not ready to let go of it yet. Tomorrow I will drive Meg to the airport. I will come home. I will sit at this table, and for the first time in a very long time, I will know exactly what is on it and what is under it and what every piece of it means. That is what Marion left me. Not money, not revenge, not a lawsuit. She left me the truth. Every piece of it organized and labeled and stored in the right order. The way you would store something you loved. And she was right. I deserve to know. If you have been listening this far, I think you probably know what it feels like to find out that someone you trusted was not who you thought they were. I tell stories like this one because they matter. If this one meant something to you, hit subscribe so you will be here for the next one. And if you want to say something, leave a comment. Even one word. I read every single one. Thanks for listening.